Hold on. Okay.
Okay. Hi, good evening. My name is Marjorie Gans, and I am a member of the board of the Writers' Room of Boston. I'm delighted that you could join us tonight for our fourth reading in our series of Readings from the Room. For anyone new to us, the Writers' Room of Boston is a co-working space in downtown Boston on State Street for any and all writers, established and emerging, who want or need a quiet place to write. It's silent. The room is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it provides desks and silence. We launched this new reading series as a way to reach out to the writing community during the pandemic and share wonderful writing, some by writers who call or have called the Writers' Room home. Tonight we have Robin Lippincott, a writer of fiction and creative nonfiction, and Amy Yellin, an essayist. Robin and Amy will read from their work and then we'll open to a larger discussion with some times for questions and answers at the end. As we go along, feel free to use that ask a question feature at the bottom, at the box at the bottom, because you can type in your questions there. This series is made possible by grants from the Mass Cultural Council and Boston Cultural Council, and we also rely on friends. So if you enjoyed this program, please consider making a contribution using the donate button at the bottom of your screen. Also, we will be recording the reading and it will be available later on the website. We begin the evening with Amy Yellin. Amy is a versatile wordsmith whose articles, essays, and author interviews have appeared in many journals. For instance, Salon.com, the Boston Globe magazine, Brainchild, the Gettysburg Review, the Missouri Review, the Writer's Chronicle, Literary Mama, the Manifestations, and others. Her awards and recognitions include a Pushcart nomination for, quote, The Memoirist, a Best of the Net nomination for Taboo, and a Best American Essays notable mention for Torn in the Baltimore Review. Amy earned her MFA in creative writing at Lesley University, and after graduation, she mentored students there for several years as part of the program's interdisciplinary component. She occasionally teaches at Grove Street in Boston, and most recently was awarded a fellowship for the Writers' Room in Boston. She is currently working on a memoir titled A Stranger There. Amy.
Thank you. This is called About a Cover-Up. A Saturday morning in 1978. I'm 10 years old, under covers, groggy from sleep. I hear my father's voice. Amy, Amy, he sings. You awake? I'm too tired to answer. You awake yet? He asks louder this time. I peek out from beneath the blanket. Yep, I'm awake now. He stands in my bedroom doorway wearing his favorite orange terry cloth robe and open-toed leather slippers. His thin dark hair is still sealed to his head from a recent shower, and his pipe, currently unlit, hangs from the belt of his robe like a gun in a holster. I could use your help, please, he says. I glance at the alarm clock. It's 8:30 a.m. But it's the weekend, I whine. I don't want to get up yet. It'll be quick, he says. Just get dressed and meet me in the garage in about 15 minutes. I consider going back to bed, but now I'm curious. Could it be my new bike has arrived? I immediately change out of my pajamas and slip on a long-sleeved blue Star Wars shirt and my favorite purple corduroy pants. I check myself in the mirror and I'm disappointed to see the chaos still reigning on my arms and face. Think of them as beauty marks, my father would often say, of my freckles right before breaking out in a rendition of the song, Here She Is, Miss America. Downstairs in the kitchen, I find my mother at the table doing the New York Times crossword puzzle. What's going on, I ask her. Well, good morning to you too, she says, looking up from her puzzle. Would you like me to make you an egg? I'm supposed to go meet Daddy down in the garage for something. Do you know why? She stares at me now. There are dark circles under her eyes. You'll see, she says. Oy vey, I don't know why he wants you to do this. She turns back to her puzzle and taps her head with a pen. Can you name an actor from Bosom Buddies? She asks. I've never watched the show. First name is Tom, last name 5 letters. Hanks, I say. I slip on my Keds and walk down the stairs toward the basement, pausing momentarily outside my father's psychiatric office. A curtain serves as a door. I peek in. Dad? No answer. I walk in cautiously, knowing I'm not supposed to be in here when he's not. My father's desk is a mess of papers, but I can still make out my baby photo in a frame, jutting out amongst the clutter. The ashtray his patients use is overflowing with cigarettes, and the giant answering machine on top of the file cabinet blinks manically. I stand in the middle of the room, searching for something, though I'm not sure what. At that moment, I hear a crash and quickly exit through the curtain. In the garage, I find my father struggling to reach something amongst a bunch of cans and garbage bags piled next to his car. Shit, he says. Dad? Oh, I didn't know you were there, Amy. Come, take this for me. He hands me a paint can. It's heavy and I struggle to carry it. What's this for? He shimmies his way out of the mess and says, follow me. My father walks with a purpose now. He is so caught up in whatever his mission is that he doesn't appear to notice his youngest daughter, Ma, struggling to carry a heavy can of paint down the driveway. Fortunately, it's a short walk. I see someone has painted something there on the street in front of the driveway, but I don't know what it is. My dad stops for a moment to light his pipe before saying, we need to cover that. A moment later, Mr. Klein from up the street drives by in his Mercedes and waves at us. There are quite a few Mercedes in the upscale, mostly Jewish New York neighborhood where we live. Hitler cars, I've heard my father call them. I put the can down on the street and look at my hands. I am branded now, the creases of the handle having left their mark on my fingers and palms. Then I look at the giant symbol my father wants to erase. What is it, I ask. A swastika, my father says quietly. I nod. Although I'm not 100% sure what a swastika is, I know it isn't good. I know it partly from my father's behavior, but also instinctually. I know it in my bones. My father picks up the red paint can and begins pouring red paint on the driveway. He doesn't stop until the entire image is covered. Then for a moment, we just stand there. When I've shared this story as an adult, this is often where I get asked, so what did your father say at this moment? What did you say? All I can do is shrug. My elderly father is no help. He has no memory of this incident. So all I have to go on is what I remember, that I was the witness, no, the accomplice to the crime of covering up, a role I would maintain for almost the next 2 decades. Because you see, most likely I didn't ask the question. Most likely I never said, Daddy, why do you look so sad about this? And most definitely he did not offer. Most likely the two of us stood there silently as I followed him up the driveway, still rubbing the impressions out of my palms and wondering when I might get that new bike after all. Now I have one more piece that's short and quick. It's titled Collaborators. Her hand is on my arm. It's not a light touch, more a gentle grip, a weight upon the area just above my wrist. Is she offering me reassurance, I wonder, or comfort? Or does she fear, somewhere in the deep recesses of her unconscious, that I might take a swing at her? I glance at my husband who sits across from me. We are guests at his aunt and uncle's house. We sit around their dinner table. Tomorrow we will ski using the equipment they have so graciously offered to loan us. My boys, then ages 7 and 6, can't wait, nor can they wait for dessert, as they have already scarfed down their slivers of chicken and tiny bits of broccoli and are making faces at each other. But it's not time for dessert yet, and so she talks, this kind woman who does charity work and bakes delicious apple pies. She talks about the new wholesale store in Florida near their second home. Before it opened, the Jewish women in town all complained about the store, that it would take too much space, create too much traffic. And then, well, of course, who goes running there the minute it opens? They do. Her hand is on my arm. She glances at me. Of course, I don't mean you, dear. Of course, she doesn't mean me. I am not a cheap Jew. The fire in the fireplace snaps loudly, and I sit there, a dumb smile on my face, the smell of apple pie getting stronger. This has happened to me before. Someone makes a derogatory comment about Jews or an anti-Semitic joke, and I simply disappear. Even though another part of me wants to speak up, to condemn this blasphemy. At 52 years old, I'm ashamed, tired of my silence, my fear. I imagine myself now boldly yet calmly saying to the aunt, do you know that my father's sister and my great-grandparents were gassed at Auschwitz because of remarks like yours? But my children are at the table, but I'm overreacting. But they are letting us sleep at their house. But that wouldn't be polite dinner conversation. And so I continue smiling like an idiot, her hand resting on my arm as though we are buddies, collaborators. Thank you.
Yeah. Amy,
Yes.
that was wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. That was really, really wonderful. And you've got some wonderful comments, just so you know.
Oh, thank you.
Our next reader this evening is Robin Lippincott. Robin is the author of 6 books, most recently Blue Territory, a meditation on the life and art of Joan Mitchell. His fiction and nonfiction have appeared in the Paris Review, Fence, American Short Fiction, Provincetown Arts, the New York Times Book Review, and many other journals. And his fiction has been anthologized in Unbroken Circles, Stories of Cultural Diversity in the South, M2M, New Literary Fiction, and Rebel Yell. He's a recipient of fellowships from Yaddo and MacDowell Colony. He's been a member of the MFA faculty of Spalding University's School of Creative and Professional Writing since 2001. And Robin is a former member of the Writers' Room. Robin.
Thanks, Marjorie, and thanks to the Writers' Room for inviting me. Amy, that was really moving. I'm reading from my most recent book, Blue Territory, a meditation on the life and art of Joan Mitchell. I'm going to start with one of the epigraphs. Nearly 20 years after her death, Joan Mitchell looks to be the only artist of her generation, man or woman, who produced a big, abstract, painterly painting that can stand up to the best of de Kooning and Pollock. The legions of arrogant young men who swaggered into the Cedar Tavern have been eclipsed by this woman who probably had more self-confidence and certainly had a more abundant gift than any guy her age in the room. And that was written by the art critic Jed Pearl. She is a woman you will never see without a cigarette between her fingers or her lips until it is too late, the cancer. And a drink, preferably scotch and much later wine, is rarely very far away from the other hand when it is not holding a paintbrush. Because of how she paints actively, she will be always slim, forever fit, with broad shoulders, strong arms and torso, and thin, shapely legs. There is the unvarying mop of brown, shoulder-length hair atop, bangs brushing characteristically raised eyebrows. And there is that wry, shy smile. Later, there are the oversized, face-obscuring glasses. It is all about hiding and seeing. She has been farsighted since age 3. Many will say that she has the mouth of a sailor, that she is tough, irascible, and in France they will call her sauvage, as both Van Gogh and Cézanne were sauvage. In her case, because she is direct, says what she thinks, is not careful or diplomatic, or, as she defines it, hypocritical, lying really. But she is also an innocent, downright girlish. Big Joan, little Joan, is how she explains herself to herself, with the help of a few shrinks. Big Joan goes out into the world and travels. Little Joan stays home with her dogs and paints. She admits to being afraid of death. Her father dies, her mother dies, and then her sister dies. Countless beloved dogs, perhaps the loves of her life, die too. Abandonment is also death, she says, and her longtime lover, my 24-year live-in is how she refers to him, abandons her for the dog sitter. She never says goodbye and forbids her friends to say it. Somebody comes for dinner and later they leave. In her mind, they have already left before they have come. She begins to dread goodbye at hello. It is the reason, or one of the reasons, that she loves painting, because in paintings there is stillness. There is no time, and so there is no death. She is alone and skating on ice. She listens as the silver blades slice and scratch the surface, watches crystalline shadings scatter and glisten in the furtive winter sunlight, leaving a trail of white flakes in her wake. The grooves she makes form patterns, a kind of calligraphy. She is cutting figure eights. She loves the turns, the swerving curves, the elegant arcs. On the ice, she is all fleetness and grace, free. Late afternoon, Garfield Park, downtown Chicago. She is 16 years old. The year is 1942. The sky is big and bluish and open, shot through with white, an overturned bowl. But the light, which has a certain metallic quality, gilt-edged by the weak winter sun, is beginning to fade. For the time being, her feet, her legs are one with the ice. And in this way, she is grounded, connected to the watery earth beneath. 10 years later in New York, de Kooning will tell her that some of his happiest childhood memories are of skating along the canals around Rotterdam. 25 plus years hence, in her studio in Vétoy, 35 miles north of Paris, but still overlooking the meandering Seine, she will more than once remember these times on the ice, this feeling, these movements, and the messages that she cut with her blades, a choreography of her own, all of which are not unlike what she experiences when she paints, brushing a broad, continuous swath across the canvas that is much higher and wider than she is tall. One long, sustained brushstroke followed by another, and then another, and so on. And after a time, in several changes of brushes, sudden short jabs, a frenzy of quick, learned, wrist-flicked strokes and finger smears, a deliberate smudge or a rubbing here, something scumbled, and then a few drips there, gestures in various colors, a furious cluster of paint, all of it controlled. As she works, legs apart, her extended hands and arms become a part of the very air. From a distance, the other end of the studio, she resembles a dark starfish splayed against the canvas, always reaching, stretching. And like a starfish, she cannot be easily pried away from whatever she attaches herself to, in this case painting, for she is finally free, freely creating, and regardless of the source emotion, it is almost impossible not to feel joy in the act. I am trying to imagine her life. She lived a full 67 years, and if we break it down, arbitrarily but neatly divide that life into thirds, the first part ending when she was 22, the second at age 44, etc. She was born in Chicago in 1925. Her father is a doctor and amateur painter, a very self-made man. Her mother is a writer, more specifically a poet, and an editor with Harriet Monroe at Poetry Magazine. She has an older sister, Sally, by 2 years. Though her childhood envelops the years of the Great Depression, her family is protected because of her father's profession, and also because of the untouched wealth accumulated by her mother's father, a German emigre and an eminent engineer, a builder of steel bridges, a structure that will fascinate Joan all her life. Bridges cover water, span voids. 38 movable bridges arch across the Chicago River. The family apartment overlooks Lake Michigan. Picture them now at the dining room table on a long winter's night, chandelier blazing overhead, their faces reflected in the great plate glass window. A large barge chugs slowly along on the ice-choked lake down below. Snow is falling. The silent foursome sits in dim light amid their mouthfuls. Turn the scene out the window upside down, and the chunks of ice become frothy cumulus clouds, and the sky transforms into the blue waters of summer. Now shake the scene, and the flakes of ice atomize into snow, forever falling out the family window. For the adult Joan, the scene is malleable. She takes it with her wherever she goes, transforms it, makes it her own. It is a white memory, white as snow, cold, ice, and silence. Her mother's luminous pearls, her sister's perfect teeth, her father's stiff shirt. White is not light. But there is also the field of blues, various shades of blue, sometimes the sky or the lake in summer, bluer than bleu, as she will say later in France, blue territory. Words are made up of color. The alphabet is color. These are memories and feelings that will be with her and that she will paint again and again throughout her life, experiences that cannot be put into words. Thanks.
Oh, thank you, Robin. I've read that book and it was just wonderful to hear you read it. So thank you. And thank you both. And do we get Amy back? Yes, we do. Wonderful. So there are comments which you can read. And I actually have a question for Amy, but there's a question from the audience for Robin. So let me make sure I address that well. 2 questions for Robin. Get them. One question. Oops. Robin, what drew you to write about Joan Mitchell?
I started the book in 2006, which was 15 years ago. And at the time, I mean, she's still not as well known as she deserves to be, but she was really not well known then. Whenever I would mention her, people would never have heard of her, or they would think I was talking about Joni Mitchell. And it really pissed me off. It's really sort of the story of women in art. And so I really wrote the book because I wanted to do what I could to help make her better known. And not that I'm claiming any responsibility for that, but today she is better known. There was a big retrospective of her work at the Whitney Museum, and there's one currently underway now that's started out in San Francisco. It's going to end up in Paris eventually.
Good, thank you. Amy, I want to ask my question of you. I've certainly read a lot of the memoirs. I've written some memoir pieces myself. And I'm just curious how, it's a big question, but how do you decide what to write about? When you read something different last night, I have a sense. What moves you to pick a particular thing?
Well, I have to say that the pandemic got me a little stuck in terms of not coming up with new essays or new material. I also have, as discussed, I have some children at home too. So there's a lot of distraction. But my goal, what I really want to do before I die is write this particular book about my father is now deceased. And I had stumbled upon his history, and so I've been trying to write a memoir about his stories and my stories and our relationship. So I don't know. I think I might have gone off on a little tangent there, but
That's all right. I mean, we get a sense of your father and your wish to write about him, and there's kind of a follow-up question, which is, have you written anything about the pandemic life, sort of creating during COVID?
say that. I'm sorry. Can you repeat that?
Have a question from, have you written anything about pandemic life, what it's like to create during COVID?
You know what? Not really. Not really, but I think that would be a really good exercise to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think some people do, and some people sort of have nothing to say about it. But
Yeah, well, it might be that I try to write it and then I have nothing to say.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Yeah, it may happen more later. So Robin, another question. What did you have to confront writing about a visual artist?
The difficulty of trying to put visual imagery in words, which is something I'm very interested in and very frustrated by. But it's sort of a challenge that I like to take on. The book Blue Territory is written in a lot of different styles, and when I thought of it, I sort of pictured really similarly to one of Joe Mitchell's canvases. She painted very large, and I pictured a huge canvas with different fields, where in some the paint is very thick and there's a lot of impasto, and as in others it's very thin, and there are there's spattering and there's dripping, and so I hope that answers the question.
And Robin, I have a follow-up question for that. Are there other artists that would inspire you to write about them?
Don't know yet. We'll see.
And a third follow-up is, how did you come upon the use of the present tense?
That's something that I think that varies throughout the book. But, of course, we writers know that one of the great benefits of the present tense is that it gives immediacy. And because the scene that I read is set in the past, I wanted to try to give it that sense of immediacy, make it come to life. So that's why I wrote that in the present tense. But there are also sections in the past tense in the book.
Does either of you, there's a comment that says, I think the present tense really works in your book.
Thanks.
And can you both see the comments? Because
yes,
I want you to make sure. Yeah, I want you to make sure that you can, because people really loved both your readings. And I think the notion of memoir, and I mean, the way you describe it about your father, but also the other things that you've written, it sounds, I'm just going to interpret, it sounds like something moves you, something really moves you, and then that brings you to it and you write about it. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Absolutely.
So it is 7:30, and let me just make sure there's a couple more questions or just comments that say how good you are. Sorry, I put up the questions and then they disappear. Well, we may not get to those last two questions, given the. Come on. continue.
Thanks, everybody who tuned in.
Okay, I did ask you that question. Yes, that's it. And thank you all very, very much. Thank you so much, Robin and Amy. That makes me so happy to hear good
Thank you
reading,
for having me.
good writing read. And read your comments because they're lovely. And we will say goodnight for now. And our next reading will be, I think it's September 26th. It's a Wednesday at the end of September. And people will get notices. It will be on the website when the next one is, but I believe the date is the 26th of September. And then there'll be one a month through to the end of the year and then going on into 2022. So that's it. Stay tuned. Thanks a lot.
And Robin,
Good night,
also
y'all.
around Darlington.
Yeah. Stick around.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.